Almost like the extension.
I was thinking that. I was like, it wouldn't be a
State thing.
everywhere in Rolla. If you had.
Street, you could get your text next or drop it. Which neither really get that often.
Good evening, everyone. Do we have someone from the Ministerial Alliance? No, not tonight.
I don't think so.
John, would you lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on the agenda is a public hearing. It's an ordinance rezoning 1002 North Bishop Avenue from R2 to C2. Tom?
I like the enthusiasm.
I wasn't ready for you to dive right in. All right, so as you said, this is a request to rezone from the R2 to the C2 General Retail District. This is located at corner of US 63 or Bishop and 11th Street. You might recognize this as being the site of the Kyoto restaurant. So the reason for this is the majority of the property is zoned to C2, but there's this little sliver of it that's for some reason zoned R2. It goes back about 50 years to why that happened. But point is, the property is under contract to be purchased by someone else, and they would like to redevelop the property. So getting the zoning all in one is would help that. The comprehensive plan designates the property as being appropriate for community commercial zoning, same as what's across the street. And I guess I should have pointed out that the C2 district is also what's across the street to the north, the gas station. Street view, right now it's the Kyoto restaurant, but if the applicant does get the property, that at some point they'd probably demolish the building and start over. Mm-hmm. Just in summary, this request does appear to be consistent with the comprehensive plan and their surrounding uses. The property does have frontage on Bishop Street, which is an arterial street. Only a portion of the property is requested to be rezoned. That's that back portion that's R2. The rest of it is already zoned C2. So once again, this will get it to where it's all zoned the same. No plans have been submitted at this point, but the applicant does intend to redevelop the property. The Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval of the request, a vote of 6-0. Before we move into the public hearing, did you have any questions for me?
Any questions for Tom? Thanks, Tom. If not, I would like to officially open a public hearing. Is there anyone that owns property within 185 feet of this proposed rezoning that would like to speak for? Is there anyone that owns property within 185 feet of this proposed rezoning that would like to speak against? Is there anyone that owns property outside of the 185 feet of this rezoning that would like to speak for? And finally, is there anyone that owns property outside of the 185 feet of this proposed rezoning that would like to speak against? If not, this closes the public hearing. Are there any questions for Tom? If not, can we have the first reading?
An ordinance to approve the rezoning of 1002 North Bishop Avenue from the R2 Family District to the C2 General Retail District.
There was one special presentation tonight, and that's a presentation from the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, Ken Quanis. Kenneth, welcome back.
Deja
It's
vu.
kind of scary. Thank you. Happy holidays and Merry Christmas, everyone. I am Ken Quanis, a member of the Bicycle Pedestrian Committee. Other members of the committee are Jacob Roeder, Dennis Snow, Dick Elgin, Jeremy Jameson, Ryan Ebert, David Schott, Cody Norris. I'm very happy to be involved with this enthusiastic, energetic committee. They've done a lot, and we still have some lofty goals in front of us. The Bicycle Pedestrian Committee is here this evening to announce that on November 21 of this year, the City of Rolla, that'd be you, have been awarded the Bronze Level Bicycle Friendly Community Award by the League of American Bicyclists. This award recognizes Rolla for its commitment to transportation and recreational resources that benefit residents of all ages and abilities while encouraging healthier and more sustainable transportation choices. Rolla joins only 8 other Missouri communities that have been awarded this distinction by the League of American Bicyclists. Those cities, I might add, are considerably larger populations than what Rolla, Missouri is. I might also add that there's only about 500 other cities across the United States that have this distinction. So please join me in applauding Rolla's award as the mayor comes down to unveil this award. I've got you involved.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
You have to put in 5 miles before.
Wow, it is a problem. Very cool.
Wow, that is slick.
Public Works Director is going to put this somewhere prominent in the city.
He's gonna change the tires, he likes them straight tires.
You may have batteries also. But this is also our 4-year bicycle-friendly community plat.
All right.
And congratulations, everyone. Without your commitment to pedestrian and bicycle safety and the committee, this wouldn't have been possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You know, I get to accept this, but it's really on behalf of a whole lot of people that do a whole lot of work. Committee, thank you very much for what you have done. City staff, you know, there's a lot that's gone into planning our bicycle trails. There are people that love them and hate them. We know that. This is the outcome. So thank you very much. Without putting you on the spot, one is silver.
We are making strides and headway even as we speak. And I believe you know some of the plan. There is going to be a loop.
There is going to be a loop.
Isn't it like 4 years before you can apply or something like
Right,
that?
it's 4 years, but there's landmarks and goals and so forth that we have to obtain. And we're already working on that list of the committees. And they have ideas and like I said, the expertise and people that are there are committed to it. But little did I know, we have another John, bicyclist guy here in the room, so they're everywhere.
Ken, what's of all of the things to get from bronze to silver, and I see the steps here on the list, which is going to be the hardest for us?
I think probably having some loops and some networks in there, and I think the other thing is road sharing lanes are tough, but we've made strides. I think some of you have seen some of those share the road and bicycle lanes. And
When you say loops, does that mean, we have a lot of bicycle trails, does that mean they're not connecting to a loop, or was the loop something else?
Well, I'm thinking in particular, or at least one of my goals, even back in the olden days when I was in charge of parks, is getting the Acorn Trail connected and making a nice circular trail that there's sort of no beginning and no end, and people don't have to start at one end and then they get to the other end and
Turn around.
They're turn around and go back again. So there's a lot of things, and of course it all relates to dollars. I mean, dollars is always the driving thing, but I wasn't going to bring up dollars because in a past life, that's what I was always here in front of city council to do.
It seems like the shared lane is a sticky one, because there's citizens that like it and there's citizens that really don't like it.
It's a bit tricky, but if you look at the two silver communities here in Missouri, which are Columbia and St. Louis, if you look at Columbia and the amount of shared lanes and bicycle lanes there, it is a, and my daughter lives in Columbia, it is sometimes gets to be pretty sticky as to how those lanes operate and so forth. But I think the committee here has done a good job of upping the awareness, and I think in the next 4 years we'll get there.
Yeah. I know there's avid bicyclists that do not think that they're safe. So I'm sure there's a controversy within the cycling community too.
Well, anytime you're out there on the road and it's you and a car, it's kind of like you and a car versus a semi. You always feel like your safety is always a great concern.
Okay. Where are you going to house the bike?
In the lobby upstairs.
I think it's going to be prominent here. That's the only thing I'll say.
Okay. Well, thank you very, very much
Thank you.
to everyone that worked on it. Moving on to old business. One item is an ordinance approving the final plat of South Meadow subdivision.
Okay, just real quick, this is the second reading of the ordinance, so just to remind you, this is the South Meadow subdivision located there at the corner of Highway O and Lions Club Drive. The property is zoned R2, so the plat is to create 5 lots basically for duplex buildings. I'll skip to, this is the final plat. 1 lot was proposed to be dedicated back to the city. The city originally sold this property to the current property owner. And they wish to build 5 duplexes on the lot. This creates 5 lots, a portion be dedicated back to the city. Some of the requirements that would normally be required have been waived as part of the deal to sell this property to the applicant, and it appears to meet all other requirements. The Planning Commission, just to remind you, what the preliminary plat did recommend approval with a vote of 4-2. Did you have any questions for me?
Any questions for Tom? Carolyn?
Yeah. Question.
Can I ask what the 2 people that didn't vote for it, did they have certain concerns?
Well, there was the property owner to the south of the property came, and they basically weren't comfortable with the fact that the setbacks would allow for them to build closer to the property line, but the site plan I put on there doesn't show them being as close to the property line as they could be. So I think there's some uncomfortableness with what the applicant could do if it were approved. But that's more of a zoning issue. It's not really even a plating issue.
So I've got a question. So just for education purposes here, this is the second final reading for the plat of the subdivision.
Yep.
They've already broken ground out there. They're already working. So,
Moving some dirt around, but they don't have building permits.
okay. So I went by and I was just a little surprised that they'd started so quickly.
They are in a hurry.
Okay.
But generally speaking, just to finish that point, a plat is not final, or I'm sorry, building permits are not issued until the plat is formalized.
That, and there's also something we worked out on the sewer. They'll either need to complete the sewer or provide bonds for the value of the sewer to ensure that it does get completed before they build the buildings.
Right, okay. Any other questions for Tom?
I'd like to hear from Steve.
Yes. Actually, there is 1 building permit issued. As a standalone lot, R2 lot, 1 duplex could be issued there but without any subdividing going on. So
Okay.
legally, I could not deny a 1 permit for it. The applicant did post a bond for the sewer and the work to be done, which was his option. So that's been posted, and there's 1 building permit issued.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. There's no other questions. Can we have the final reading?
An ordinance to approve the major subdivision final plat of South Meadow subdivision.
Is there a motion to approve?
Make a motion.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Roll call vote.
Jordan,
Yes.
Boland,
Yes.
Ruder,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Kraft,
Yes.
Muse,
Yes.
Roder,
Yes.
Everly,
Yes.
Schott,
Yes.
12 ayes.
Ordinance is approved. Moving on to new business, the first item is an ordinance approving a minor crossing subdivision plat.
Ooh, yeah. Okay. This should look familiar. This is the same property we talked about earlier with the rezoning, at the corner of 63 and 11th. As I said, the applicant has the property under contract, and they'd like to redevelop the property. However, the property is made up of 2 platted lots and 1 unplatted area. And so this minor subdivision basically will combine everything together into one lot to allow for the redevelopment. So if the rezoning is approved, then the whole thing will be zoned C2, but right now, part of it is zoned R2. This is the current building. Basically, the plat's just combining everything together into one lot. And in summary, just it creates one lot and appears to be in compliance with all applicable requirements. Oh, the Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval of the request with a vote of 6-0.
Any questions for Tom? If not, can we have the first reading?
An ordinance to approve the minor subdivision final plat of minor crossing.
Next item is an ordinance authorizing me to enter into an agreement with Missouri Department of Corrections.
We have an ordinance in the packet which would authorize the mayor to enter into an agreement with the Missouri Department of Corrections. We employ 8 offenders from the South Central Correction Center to do various tasks in both public works and parks. We've been involved in this program since 2005 and been very pleased with the program. We're also asking tonight that we do a first and final reading on the ordinance. The state didn't give us much time to turn it around. We just got it here recently, and they'd like to have it back by the end of the month. So we're asking it to be done full authorization tonight.
Any questions for Steve or some of the newer council persons familiar with this program? Rachel?
Yeah, so what's to make sure that I understand, because I'm not familiar with this, so basically we pay the Department of Corrections and they pay the offenders, or how much is being exchanged here?
They get about $1 an hour,
They get $1 an hour.
and they get to spend half of it in the commissary, but the other half goes into a savings account that it's available to them when they finish their sentence. We've got a little nest egg to put down payment on an apartment or something like that.
Okay. And so is this kind of, the offenders are people with sort of like misdemeanors, just normal 30-day jail time, longer sentences, or?
Well, the nonviolent, I think, is
Okay.
the word you're looking for. That's the kind of offender that we.
And misdemeanors, you don't go to prison on a misdemeanor.
And I think they're limited to 2 years remaining on their sentence.
I think 3.
3 years, okay.
Steve, how long we've been participating in this?
Since '05.
Since '05, yeah, it's been
We've
a while.
not really had any incident worth mentioning. It's been very, very successful.
Just a quick question, Steve. The main places we'll be using them will be kind of the trimming again, or what? Just to have an idea of where we'll be using them.
They mow grass at the cemeteries. They
Okay.
mow weeds and do tree trimming and pick up trash. And I'll be honest with you, they do a lot of stuff that we probably wouldn't do if we didn't have this group.
Steve, do we always do a 1-year contract?
There's a renewal. We've got a master contract, but this is just a renewal of that.
I think we'd be just as happy going longer, but they just keep doing a 1-year term.
There's no other questions. First reading, please.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Rolla, Missouri to execute on behalf of the city of Rolla, Missouri, a certain agreement between the city of Rolla, Missouri and Missouri Department of Corrections.
Staff has,
Suspend the rules and have the final reading.
Second?
motion made and second to suspend the rules and have the final reading. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Final reading, please.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Rolla, Missouri to execute on behalf of the city of Rolla, Missouri, a certain agreement between the city of Rolla, Missouri and Missouri Department of Corrections.
So move.
Second.
The motion made and second, roll call vote.
Atwood,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Boland,
Yes.
Schneider, yes,
Reuter.
Yes. Mush,
Yes.
Roder,
Yes.
Eberly,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Schott,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
12 ayes.
It is approved. Next item is a resolution adopting the City of Rolla's Emergency Operations Plan. Chief?
Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to present the emergency operation plan. I have with me Brad Woods. He's a firefighter with the City of Rolla Fire and Rescue on our department. He also functions as the Emergency Operations Director or the Emergency Management Director for the City of Rolla as appointed by the mayor, and has been serving in that position for the last 2 years almost, and is funded as part of that 50/50 salary through SEMA when he is operating in that function and wearing that hat, working for us. And so every 5 years, the SEMA and FEMA require us to update our emergency operation plan. And normally that's just a very minute changes throughout the year. This year, they have asked us to transition from what they had called annexes to ESF functioning, which then coincides back to the state level of, they have ESF functions there 1 through 15. Skipping number 14 for whatever reason. So we have 14 functions. Those were outlined in the paper provided to you, such as transportation, communications, public works, firefighting, hazardous materials, and it goes on. So those have been updated and provided to you to approve tonight. It does tie back into a grant request for the City of Rolla when we request money through EMPG, which is a SEMA grant, or we ask money through Fire Act, or we ask money through Homeland Security. It all ties back to, has the EOP have been approved on a 5-year basis by the City Council. We recommend approval of the resolution adopting the City of Rolla Emergency Operation Plan.
Chief, 2 questions. How often do you actually test the plan for effectiveness?
It's supposed to be activated, the EOC is supposed to be activated at least once a year.
Once a year. So
And
you
we
have
will-
like you reenact an accident or an event or something like that?
Yeah, it's more like a tabletop exercise. Say a tornado blew through town.
Right.
And just go through the motions and make sure everything works.
Okay. And I noticed that sort of all city department heads are involved in the training, whatever. How do you go about doing that? Are they come to the tabletop event, or?
We have not actually activated our own EOC since I've been in charge here. The last one was with Phelps County. We activated theirs and went through their way they do it.
So the state requirement requires it to be on a regional basis. So he's performing that function through Region I with Brett Hendricks, which is the SEMA coordinator. He's performing that EOP operation on a yearly basis through an exercise with them.
So is the theory that if there is a event in Rolla, it's really, in effect, a regional event?
It goes through the county first. If we have something just for the CRO, we can activate our EOC.
So I guess what I'm driving is, how come we don't practice our own?
That's a valid point.
And this is valid. But
Okay.
we are in
It's a
the
valid
process
point.
of setting up our EOC. It is at the police station. I gotta give it to Stacy and get some wiring and stuff like that done. So you can
Okay, I don't want to belabor the point. Thank you very much. Any questions for?
Thank you all.
It's a comprehensive plan when you read through it.
Did you show the whole book?
Oh,
Maybe I
yeah,
missed that one.
400 pages.
Yeah, we just was going to point out, we just copied doesn't show pages in the packet.
Is that why they don't do it?
Yeah.
But when you look at the area of responsibility, clearly the areas of day-to-day responsibility on this is amongst the subject matter experts.
Correct.
You know, I noticed that John and I are really outside observers
It points that out on
Yeah,
this-
it does.
this page.
Pretty clearly, I may add.
But that's.
But that's fine, that's the way it's
state-
supposed to.
That's statewide.
Yeah, that's supposed to be. It's supposed to be. You went in the hands of the professionals, so thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, is there a motion to approve the resolution? Oh, I'm sorry, hold on, gotta read it.
A resolution adopting the 2019 City of Raleigh, Missouri Emergency Operations.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made in second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you, guys. Next item is a resolution authorizing me to execute a contract for service with the Rolla Chamber of Commerce.
Really, the next three items are somewhat related. It's been involving the Chamber of Commerce and that contract for tourism services that we've had since 1993. The first contract is the one that actually enters into the arrangement where we're providing them the hotel motel tax proceeds, at least 90% minus $25,000 for tourism purposes. The second one is the lease of the property where they manage that, and the third one is fiscal services where we actually do the collections of the hotel motel tax. So we'll start talking about this first one. As mentioned, it's interesting, and I included on page 4D3 the state law that was passed in about 1992 that gave us the authority to go to the voters for what was up to 5% hotel motel tax. We end up doing 3%. That was before, I think, most of our times here, although, Lou, you might have been on council when that happened. I don't remember how far, 1993? Yeah. But oddly enough, when the chamber came to the city council, asked the city council to do the hotel motel tax, the city council didn't have much interest in doing it, so the chamber sort of ran with it, and they ran to Jeff City and were able to get the legislatures to pass it. Well, not surprisingly, there's this very unique wording in our statutory language that basically says the city can do that, but you have to contract with a independent provider. In other words, the city couldn't create their own department of a convention visitors bureau, which you might find in some larger cities where they fund it through their typical taxes. In this case, we're required to contract that away. So it doesn't say that it has to be contracted with the Chamber of Commerce, but that has been the body that we have been working with since 1993 on tourism purposes. And as you saw from Stevie's presentation in the last meeting or two, they've done a very nice job of doing that for us. The agreement itself, if you look at pages D4 through D9 or so, is pretty much the form of the document we've used the last several years, but we did a very thorough dusting off of this document about 6-7 years ago and really changed the structure of the agreement, and this is our first proposed renewal of that effort that was done a few years back. A couple of key changes: we're proposing a 4-year contract going forward. For some reason, we did a 2-year contract last time. Prior to that, they all had been 3-year renewals. We also agreed, and this was in discussions between myself and the chamber staff and the president, rather than their quarterly presentations, to do 3 a year every 4 months, which tie in really well with their audit, their budget, and then sort of a mid-year review or a summer review. So that's in here for proposed consideration. None of these are binding the city council. If you see a need to change any of that, we certainly can have that conversation and go back to them. Everything else in there on this particular contract stays the same as far as the deliverables, the metrics that are as part of that. So let me leave it with that and answer some questions that you might have.
Rachel?
Well, one first little thing, because I noticed the revision under 6A, changing it from not later than the first council meeting in February to March. And then under 2B1, the RACC will present an annual report at a mutually agreed upon place, but not later than the first council meeting in February of the subsequent year. Are those both supposed to be March, or?
Let me get to 2B.
It's under scope of services, RACC obligations, number 1.
Yeah, that should be, I'm sorry, that's a mistake on our part. That should be, on 2B1, should be March as well.
Okay. All right. And then the second question I had, just as a quick thing, in terms of the performance benchmarks, because I noticed a lot of them are sort of more just sort of like, basically it's tracking the money, right? Are we getting more revenue from the motel tax? Are people coming and spending more in Rolla? And we're collecting more sales tax revenue. I was wondering if there had ever been a thought or discussion about looking for kind of an external benchmark, right? Like a comparative city that might be doing a particularly good job, that's sort of kind of roughly in the range, because I know I looked today, it's kind of difficult to find, another town of 20,000 people on a major highway with a university. But there are university towns with similar populations. There are other cities with similar populations on major highways. If there might be a benchmark to sort of compare more externally, like how well they're doing versus perhaps other strong competitors, right? As a motivator, perhaps, or just for better information?
The reports and the benchmarks are sort of a minimum. Okay, so going back to the time, for many years, there were no benchmarks and no reports whatsoever in place. And I won't go into those particular meetings, but this really serves as a minimum.
Okay.
If you have suggestions, then let us know. We could go back and incorporate them.
Okay. Okay.
But I think you have to be more specific when you say you're comparing us with somebody else. So are we comparing the community performance versus a similar community, or are we asking to compare the chamber's efforts versus the efforts of an entity in a different city? So those are two different things.
Okay, yeah.
So if you could maybe think about it, be more specific.
Yeah, I guess it was more sort of perhaps if you're thinking about things like the website statistics, tracking that. It sounded like from their last meeting that they're really trying to work on developing a social media strategy. So looking for, clickbacks, response, engagement, benchmarks, those sorts of things. But I mean, I'm happy to think about it kind of further and bring something back another time.
And we can talk with the chamber about that. They have a good feel for comparables. We know the cities that we compare ourselves to: Warrensburg, Sedalia, Kirksville, Hannibal. There's plenty of cities out there. But one, we don't know that they got a hotel motel tax. Everybody's got a unique sort of characteristic in their community. In our case, ours is really funding the visitor center, which happens to be on this property. Some others may not have a visitor center. They may just be doing it through a staffing level. So finding really good benchmarks might be a challenge, and then you have to be able to extract their data, have them provide that data. But the idea is valid, and I can talk with the chamber about, okay, who do you think would be good comps? And there may only be one or two, but that might be enough to at least give some idea of doing it.
They may already be, as a standard practice, comparing themselves or talking to the other cities and sharing. My guess is they're probably doing some of that now. Hey, what are you doing? What works, doesn't work? I mean, these people all travel the same circles. But we'll find out. David?
Yeah, I was going to just say real quickly, when we were going over this 6-7 years ago, when we created all these metrics, at the time we found out there was nobody doing any of this. So Rolla was really sort of the first to begin the city council asking those questions and wanting that reporting. So we were a little surprised to find that even with very sophisticated convention visitor bureaus that have been around for decades, weren't doing most of what we were asking our chamber to do. So now it's just become incorporated into their practice. But my guess is we're not going to find a lot of metric monitoring of tourism, but it's worth looking at, so we'll do that for sure.
Yeah.
David?
I know a couple questions that I was hoping to ask the director or some folks from the chamber, and I know weren't able to make it tonight. In light of that, and in light of just being able to spend a couple more weeks looking into if there are any other kind of metrics we could look at, I'd like to make a motion that we table this till the next meeting so we can look at that a little more and actually be able to ask a few questions in front of the chamber staff.
I'd rather not surprise them. So if you have questions that you'd like to at least think out loud on now.
There's an awful lot of them, so that's why I was hoping to kind of work with them as they were here.
Okay. Well, the right thing to do is to let John work with them. I don't think working with them in an open setting like this is the more productive way to do it. So if you want to give those issues to John and have John sit with Stevie and go over and report back at the next meeting.
Okay, I guess we could do it that way.
But
I just
if you'd
thought
like
this
to
would be
set
a
it aside,
public
you
forum
could.
to kind of have the public involved, but I guess if we can go through this and we get some responses, we can also share that with the
Well, I
public.
think the public will get involved when we report back, but I don't think you want to negotiate or put somebody on the spot and says, why aren't you doing this or would you do that? Because we'll be here till 12 o'clock at night.
Okay, yeah, well, I wasn't going to get down to, yeah. nitpicking specifics, but just some questions I had. So I'll work with John on that if we.
Yeah, and share the questions. I mean, if you have questions, chances are other people have the same questions. So
Okay.
that's what I'm saying. Distribute them.
Sure.
You know, the
I'll
best.
take what I've got and distribute it to the council as well as John, and then we can kind of go from there.
Yeah.
And maybe we can also have a little bit of an exchange on like researching if there's any other metrics. And like John said, if we really can't find anything, it certainly makes sense to kind of keep it more broad. But if there's a couple things that we could add that would make it a little more, I'd compare that to maybe when we have our city administrator discussion of like, hey, what are some things we want to see achieved? And if there's a way to do that, maybe that's helpful to have some metrics in there.
Okay. Are you making a motion?
So I'd like to make a motion that we just table this for the next.
Set
for
it
the next
aside.
meeting. Yeah,
Set aside, isn't it, John?
Yeah.
set aside, excuse me.
So there's a motion on the floor to set this aside. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Is there a second? There's a
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Hold on. What happens to this contract that runs out at the end of the year? What do we do then? Because we're not going to talk to this again until maybe January 6th.
Yeah. I mean, my thought would be that they and we would mutually agree to extend it until January 6th. So, I mean, we'll leave that to council. I did talk with Stevie and say she wasn't feeling well when coming tonight. I said, if there are some questions, council may set aside. I think the parties are comfortable with that, but
Yeah.
we'll leave it up entirely up to
It's
you.
not a January 6th. So till they speak, till she speaks with her staff, till she speaks with her board and comes back, you're probably looking at February.
The board had reviewed what we have here, and they're comfortable, but if we change it.
No, but I'm just saying, if you're going
Yeah.
to go back and add other burdens on there, she's not going to do that without a board.
Right.
And we can always amend this, too, if we come up with other ideas and they're agreeable to it.
That would be more efficient,
Mhm.
because I doubt that you're going to put very many benchmarks
Yeah.
on top of this. You might put a few, but I doubt that you're going to make a whole page worth. So, there's a motion and a second to set it aside. So why don't we do hands? All in favor of setting aside, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. I keep waiting, a few more hands will go up. 6. All against? 6.
By my count, that's
What
6.
those times, rare times.
Mr. Mayor?
All right, so I'm going to vote no to move it along with the understanding that we continue to follow up on these other questions with the intent of coming back perhaps and making an amendment to the contract. So, with that said, is there a motion to approve the resolution as presented?
So moved.
Hold on.
Oh, you gotta read it.
Actually, there's two things. There was a change that Rachel
yeah.
Schneider suggested, so we need to have a motion to do make that amendment.
Okay, so is there a motion to amend section 2B1 to reflect the correct month of March instead of February?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made in second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Can we read the amended resolution?
Yes. A resolution authorizing the mayor of the city of Rolla, Missouri to execute on behalf of the city of Rolla, Missouri, a contract for service between Rolla Area Chamber of Commerce and the city of Rolla, Missouri for tourism promotion.
Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
Make a motion.
Second.
Motion made in second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Let the record show 1 no. Next item is a resolution authorizing me to execute a chamber lease for the forest property, Forest Service property.
So this is where we basically now have a contract with them where they're taking the hotel motel tax proceeds and they're running the visitor center and they're managing the property, the Forest Service property that visitor center is sitting on. We do withhold from the amount that we collect, about $25,550. And that goes towards the Forest Service to acquire that. We will have paid that off. It's $511,000 over, I think it was a 20-year period of time at no interest. We've got another 7, 8, 9 years or something like that on that payment. And this has them responsible then for taking a portion of those hotel motel tax proceeds and paying for maintenance improvements on the grounds. For instance, they just a month or two ago bid out new roof replacements for all the buildings on the property, with the exception of the visitor center, which had a new roof on a couple of years ago. And we've run that through State Historic Preservation Office for approval, as we have to do almost everything that takes place on those properties. And SHPO has signed off on that. So again, the only real change to the lease, it extends the time, and we eliminate the reference to the roundabout, the drive-through, which was since added as part of the 72 extension. So happy to answer any questions about the lease.
Any questions for John? If not, can we read the resolution?
Yes, that's F.
E.
E, sorry. A resolution authorizing the mayor of the city of Rolla, Missouri to execute on behalf of the city of Rolla, Missouri, the chamber lease forest service property by and between the city of Rolla, Missouri and the Rolla Area Chamber of Commerce.
Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made in second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Next item is a resolution authorizing me to execute a fiscal agent agreement.
And since the city acts as the collector of this, the Missouri Department of Revenue doesn't do this. When the legislature's allowed cities to enact this tax, we actually do this collection and billing and pursuit of the payments of the hotel motel tax. So we collect that. We retain 2% for our collection purposes. The contract, and this goes back to the original founding, actually has the city retaining 10%. So we do provide them a report every year of how we incur 8% of the value of that in tourism-related support services. So that accounts for 10% of roughly $340,000 in total hotel motel tax proceeds. And then, as I mentioned, we'll withhold the $25,550, which is annually to acquire the property. And then in an amendment we did a couple of years ago, we take responsibility for the buildings themselves from a property insurance, and we have them pay well, not them, we use the hotel motel tax proceeds to pay the insurance premium on the building, not contents, but the buildings themselves. The estimate this last year was about $1,600, and we provide them a statement of how that dollar is being spent. So with that, you see a similar agreement to the others, runs concurrently, just recognizes the Finance Department's role in collections and remittance of the tax.
Any questions for John? If not, can we read the resolution?
A resolution authorizing the mayor of the city of Rolla, Missouri to execute on behalf of the city of Rolla, Missouri, the fiscal agent agreement between the city of Rolla and the Rolla Area Chamber of Commerce.
Is there a motion to approve?
Make a motion.
Second.
Motion made in second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Resolution is approved. Moving on to claims and/or fiscal transactions. The first is a motion awarding a bid for a skid steer loader.
Good evening. What we're looking at with this item is the scheduled replacement of a small loader that we use at the recycling center. And this is really our main workhorse there that handles primarily all of our materials. This is a budgeted item. We recently solicited bids and reviewed those, and you should have a list of those or tabulation of those within your packet. And we are recommending awarding the bid to the lowest bidder that meets the specs, which would be Bobcat of St. Louis for a 2019 S590 for $36,498.
Any questions for Brady?
I've got a question, Brady. Why what is the difference between the S70 or S570 and the S590?
The 570 is going to have a smaller engine with less horsepower.
Do you need more horsepower?
We do. The one that we've got is really what we need for some of the things that we lift. I'm afraid that a smaller engine would bog down and wouldn't do the job.
So this would be comparable to the one we currently have, or bigger?
Very comparable.
Okay. Thank you.
The specs were written for the equivalent of the 590, right? How were the specs written?
Yes, they
Okay,
were.
So the 570 was just an alternate bid?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Correct.
There's no other question. Is there a motion to approve the awarding of the bid to Bobcat of St. Louis?
So moved. Second.
Motion made in second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Thank you.
Next item is a motion awarding a bid for a snowplow. How appropriate.
A minute too soon.
I bet they're going to vote yes on this one.
So staff received 3 bids for mounting a plow on an existing dump truck. NAPI truck equipment was low bid at $14,681. So staff recommends awarding the bid to NAPI truck equipment. Any questions?
How fast can you get it here?
David?
6 to 8 weeks is what they're telling me. Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. 6 to 8 weeks? Why didn't we buy this in August?
Well, so we budgeted for it, budget time. When I called them after budget, there's no need to get in a hurry because it's going to be February, March before we can get you in to get it put on.
All right, so either way.
Either way.
Okay.
Yes.
David?
I just have a quick question about snowplow blades. I had somebody mention to me today that they've heard about rubber edge snowplow blades. I'm curious what the difference between what we're getting in that is and just in general what you guys use.
So I've used the rubber ones. They work really well. They are really, really expensive. I mean, they are really expensive. They've still got the same cutting edge. We use carbide tip metal blades. The rubber blades would just be hard rubber with the carbide, cutting edge. So it's still the same cutting edge. It's just they fit the road a little better, but they are really expensive. We've checked into them.
Like something to compare, just to get an idea.
I can replace the blades 5 times for what it costs for one set of those. So it'd be
5 times more.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's no other questions? Is there a motion to award the bid?
So moved. Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Mayor and the city council comments. I'll defer to council first. Any comments? David?
I just had a quick one in relation to our bicycle friendly community award, and I just wanted to give some extra thank you to Steve Hargis, who has kind of had forethought on the idea of working for some of these things for a long time. I know there's some folks that told him, don't bother, you'll never be able to get there, it'll never happen, Raul won't go for it. But I just want to give him credit for seeing the long game in this and staying persistent, working with council in the past on kind of the complete streets idea, where we're trying to make it safe for everybody involved. And then I think the culmination of that has also been this bicycle pedestrian advisory committee that really has helped look at all the angles of what is possible. And so just want to give thanks to Steve Hargis.
Yeah, I share that. Steve, I would ask you one thing, though. The issue of painting those lines on the street in those special lanes, I get complaints from people, and sometimes they're cyclists as well, who believe that those lines actually enhance the chance of a accident. So I'm not necessarily asking you to respond, but I think when we get to that point, I think some community feedback beyond the advisory committee is warranted.
Yeah.
I think if you're going to go paint the streets with those lines, you ought to probably come to a meeting like this and at least give the public a chance to hear it.
Right. I mean, I'd be happy to do that. There's a philosophy out there that was, John Forster is the one that started it back in the 70s, that get your big boy pants on and go ride your bicycle. You don't need any help from anybody to do that.
I don't know the particulars. I'm not
I mean,
making a
that's-
case for
that's-
or against.
that's where it
All I'm
comes
saying
from.
is I hear it. That's all I'm saying.
And the advisory committee has taken the view, and I fully support that, is we're building a sidewalk and pedestrian network for all users, not just the ones that are comfortable riding their bicycle in traffic. We're looking at everybody in the whole community and how do we best serve those needs.
I hear you, Steve, and I don't want to downplay the advisory committee or its membership. All I'm saying is sometimes you need to float a trial balloon beyond that committee.
Yeah.
Or any committee for that matter. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Any other council comments?
I just wanted to
Yeah.
say, with all the snow today, that I wanted to thank the streets, police, fire, everybody for all the work that they do to keep us safe. And I want to thank the public for really staying off the streets and encourage people. I think my friends are kind of tired of seeing it on Facebook, but every time we get that first snow, I always recommend to people go download the MoDOT app and see what the roads are like before you actually go out there. And it's a nifty little app. You can actually get on there in your living room and see what the corner of 63 and Kings Highway looks like, and say, maybe I don't need to go to the grocery store. And it will tell you the highways and everything in the state. So it's a nice little app, and it's free.
Yeah.
And I do appreciate everything that everybody did, and just staying out of the way of the snow plows and such.
Yep, give a chance to clear the roads.
Yep.
I'd like to extend a thank you to the Rolla Sister City Committee and the downtown business. You know, our downtown activities, year after year, are just getting bigger and better, whether it's the Halloween, or the Celebration of Nations, or the Summerfest, but the most recent one was Chris Kindle Mart and the Lichter Knot. And again, it's just wonderful that we have them. There's a tremendous amount of work that goes in. And it's interesting, the comment that I got from somebody on Friday night about that. They said, you know, they went downtown and they looked up from 6th Street, and they said it looked like a Hallmark TV show where there was some trombones and some trumpets playing, some Christmas carols on one, there was people singing on another, we had the tree, we had the food, the bonfire. We didn't have the snow, but that's okay. So anyway, a good shout out to all those people that put a lot of work into those downtown events. Any other comments? Moving on to citizen communication. Is there anyone that would like to speak to the city council? If not, comments for the good of the order? Rachel?
Actually, while we're on the subject of bikes, just an event coming up that I think some people might be interested in. The Rolla Multisport Club is going to be hosting a Ride the Lights event here in town on December 19th. Different people have been kind of organizing these Tour de Lights, but it's essentially a group of bikers all gather at the public house. They drive around on a pre-designed route to go see some of the lights, because we got a lot of people in Rolla who've got great light displays, and then they eventually go down to the Lions Club Park to see the lights down there and kind of tour the way back. So it's a nice ride if you want to get out there on your bike.
Let me ask a question.
Sure.
Do they do that like they do in the city with a police escort?
No, they don't do it with a police escort, because we're kind of going in a big pack. So when you've got kind of multiple bikes together, and the routes generally tend to stay in residential areas more, and also in cases we'll take use of the Acorn trails, right? So they leave like the Lions Club kind of through the back there and get on the trail and go back up that way.
Do these bikes have lights?
They're
yes.
full of lights.
Yeah, people are wearing like Christmas lights, or decorating their
That's what I was driving at.
and so they're very noticeable. People know what they're doing. They're staying off Bishop, right? Because it tends to be they'll kind of come down through the parking lot at Big Lots to get into Lions Club. So, I mean, everybody's been safe and respectful the times I've ridden out.
I understand the mayor will be riding the bronze bike.
Yeah. With no lights. Very good. Glad they're doing something like that. Any other comments? We have one item for closed session, two items actually, dealing with personnel and bid specifications. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Corral?
Yes.
Schott?
Yes.
Reuter?
Yes.
Schneider?
Yes.
Jordan?
Yes.
Murphy?
Yes.
Henry?
Yes.
Boland?
Yes.
Muse?
Yes.
Roeder?
Yes.
Everly?
Yes.
Allen?
Yes.
Trolbase?
Yeah, I'll get them on email. Okay.